Hello, welcome. I am so happy to be joining all of you fantastic people here today on this live recording of episode 13 of Inspiring Insights. So I'm your host, Erin, and I'm in the business of amplification. And I've really been thinking about the word amplification for a bit. And what I mean by that is that I looked inside myself and I asked myself the question, what makes me feel alive? And the answer was born through the development of this show, duly called Inspiring Insights, because it really makes me feel alive when I feel inspired and when I feel insightful. And so that's this show is brought to you by Reawaken Co. And we're the company that helps you waltz through the natural wellness world in good company. Yeah. So I actually really absolutely love hearing and sharing the passions of practitioners and how they are doing the most incredible things to guide women who are cis, who are trans, and also non-binary folks to a better version of their own life and their own health. So Reawaken Co. is an online education platform that's focused on connecting you to the right network of natural wellness practitioners so that you don't get lost in a broken system. So go ahead and follow us on social media at reawaken_co. This is our show, Inspiring Insights, where we host amazing practitioners like Dr. Anne-Marie here in our network to inspire a more conscious world, helping you run just as efficiently and authentically as you can. So drop a little wave in the comments below. I love seeing all of your beautiful names and faces popping in and listening in. And for everyone watching the replay, I feel you. I feel your energy. And thank you so much for showing up for yourself today. So today we're featuring a very special guest, Dr. Anne-Marie Regina. You are a naturopathic doctor, Anne-Marie,
yes,
an educator, and you focus on health optimization of specifically new moms and also professional women. So at a very young age, Dr. Anne-Marie knew that she wanted to become a naturopathic doctor, and she dedicated 8 years of her schooling to achieve that goal. And in her practice, she helps patients understand their triggers, see what's possible, and feel comfortable in their own bodies. So, most importantly, she is a dedicated social justice and patient advocate and believes with the right tools and education that all women can soar. And I so appreciate that in her, and I'm so happy to have her here today. Thank you, Dr. Anne-Marie.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I love Reawaken Co. and what it's doing for patients and practitioners alike. So this is an awesome platform to be able to speak to people face-to-face virtually about things that they really truly care about. So thank you.
Yes, of course. And we're happy to boost those voices, right? And that's really our goal, is to make wellness more accessible in general. So really important to me. So today we're going to be talking about all things weight. So, stubborn weight gain is the title. Having said that, I do want to, touch a little bit on more of like the actual terminology, which you deem it as weight loss resistance. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So tell us what that's all about, and maybe give us a brief overview of that.
Yeah. So weight loss resistance is the feeling of I'm doing everything. I feel like I've cut all my calories. I'm eating healthy. I'm exercising every day, or at least like 4 to 5 days a week, which is what my doctor told me, and I'm still not losing weight. And then when I go talk to somebody about it, they're like, "Well, are you exercising?" Which is kind of stimulating like this idea of guilt and shame, like it's your fault that you're not doing enough. And so again, this is more for the people that are trying their best, as opposed to like the people that, can do well with the basic lifestyle changes like diet and exercise, because we know that those are very helpful for maintaining a healthy weight. But again, it can become more complex than that. There are a lot of factors that can play a role into people having weight gain. And it doesn't help that when we look on our social media feed, and, just in general, like what we see in everyday life is like, you have to be skinny and beautiful. And even in saying that, people that are skinny and beautiful don't always feel skinny and beautiful. So there's a huge mindset piece to it as well. So it's very complex. It takes a lot of factors into consideration when we think about weight loss resistance, and it can be very stressful for people as well.
Yeah, and thank you for touching on that piece of, the norm of living in a beauty obsessed culture is really quite, shame inducing for us, especially people who identify as women or, have been in the struggle of looking like a woman even, so it's, there's so much complexity in that. And besides, everybody knows that exercise is great. Obviously, and it should be something that doctors prescribe, I firmly believe in that, but also there's this whole other notion of, okay, people don't realize that maybe they're working out too much and their cortisol is already really high and their stress levels are also really high and their inflammation levels are so high. And, how can we let a patient or client know that may not be the best option for their weight loss journey, or if that's their goal, to lose that weight?
Yeah, that's a really good point to touch on, because again, everybody is thinking, okay, well, I just need to exercise even harder. I need to cut even more calories. And that's what I typically hear coming into my office. It's like, I cut so well. I ate so well this week or this month. But it's very true. Like, everybody is completely different. Their health needs are completely different. So maybe running is okay for one person, but not for another. So again, like, you touched on the whole cortisol piece that plays a big role. I find one of the major factors to people not losing weight is stress and anxiety. And we know that cortisol is that stress hormone. So if that's really high, what that's signaling to your body is that I'm in a state of famine. I'm in a state of stress. I'm trying to run from that bear or like catch my food. I'm not thinking about losing weight. You're not giving your body a chance to want to lose weight if it's afraid of not being able to catch its food or or being afraid there's going to be famine, or there's something that you're being attacked, right? So if you don't give your body that chance to recover and to recuperate, your body's never going to have that signal to actually lose the weight. So stress and anxiety plays a really big role in that factor of weight loss resistance, for sure. And it's just, emails trigger stress now, right? So it's something that people really have to address as part of their health care when we think about weight loss resistance. Yes,
totally. And I wholeheartedly agree with you there. And I would also mention that, we are in this position now where body positivity is like really growing. And I love that for folks. And there's also this, fine line between like saying what is healthy per se, and also, kind of fat shaming or something along those lines, like what's a healthy weight. And so I guess maybe my question is, what factors can cause a resistance to weight loss in a way that, may actually, folks may need to look out for, because that's more important for their own health versus, their mental health or feeling that shame of being overweight kind of thing. Like, what's actually the things that are really important to us as we kind of traverse that journey?
Yes. So again, what I typically do when people come into my practice with this sort of issue is we typically always run blood work to rule out underlying causes. I think that if you've just been told you need to exercise and eat healthier without addressing that piece, then you're missing a huge piece of the puzzle. So number one thing I always like to rule out is insulin resistance. So most people don't get tested for insulin resistance. They typically only get tested by their medical doctor, blood sugar, so fasting glucose, and HbA1c, which is your 3-month marker of blood sugar. This does not tell you if you have insulin resistance or not. Insulin is the hormone that basically sucks up glucose and puts it into your cells so that way you can actually use it for energy.
Okay. And sorry, reverse. Glucose is the thing you get from eating food, right?
Glucose is the thing that you get from eating food. Exactly.
Got it.
But insulin also gets triggered by other foods, not just sugar-based or carb-based. It's also proteins, right? And certain fats. So essentially every time you've eaten something, your insulin will be triggered. But the thing is, when you have insulin resistance, is that your body will make much more insulin than it typically will in order to absorb that glucose. So if we use a donut for an example, you have let's say, for example, the donut has 100 molecules of glucose, and your body should produce 100 molecules of insulin at the exact same ratio to suck up all of that glucose, right? However, in insulin resistance, instead of making 100 molecules of insulin, you're making 100,000. So you need much more insulin in order to have the same glucose absorption. What that does when you have that excess insulin is it causes issues with blood sugar. So maybe you feel hangry all the time. Maybe you have that weight gain in the abdomen area. It could also result in some acne. Some people have that as well. So it can result in a lot of other factors that people may or may not notice, but can all be attributed to insulin resistance. And again, unless you test insulin, you will never know, because you can also have regular blood sugar levels, but abnormal insulin levels. So that's another reason why if you've gone in and let's say your doctor does run blood sugar and it's normal, then they're going to just send you on your way because they haven't looked at the insulin factor.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. And as far as I know, I don't think I've ever been tested for insulin in a blood work.
No. And I find too, even the patients, and it's especially interesting to see it in the patients that do exercise a lot and that do eat healthy, because you would never suspect that to be the case. But a lot of the times it's very true. Like you see it very high in people. So it's always a good thing to monitor, especially if you're having that sort of issue. The other thing that I always like to test is for a thyroid condition. So thyroid and insulin also play a role together because your thyroid gland regulates your metabolism. And so if your metabolism is lower, your blood sugar is going to be a little bit higher. So is insulin resistance probably going to be a prominent thing. Usually people have slower bowel movements or like slower bowels, really fatigued, hair loss, all of the above. But sometimes, they may not have any of those symptoms because on blood work, the ranges could be quote unquote normal, but you could have suboptimal levels, which is another reason why seeing a naturopath or someone that can, like a functional medicine practitioner that actually can be able to look at your blood work and say, listen, this is within the normal range, but it's not optimal range. So I also see a lot of people that, there would never be flagged, blood work would never be flagged by their MD, but when I take a look at it, it's lower than I would like to see it. Yep. The other issue that I also tend to see with thyroid testing is that they only tend to test one of the hormones as opposed to all of them. So ruling out things like Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune condition, is also really an important factor in weight loss resistance as well, which again, most people don't get tested for Hashimoto's unless they have severe symptoms or unless, their TSH, which is the typical hormone that they run, is super high. And even then, sometimes they don't run it. So it's important to get a full thyroid panel done as opposed to just like one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I hear you there. And so with what you were talking about just before you mentioned Hashimoto's, was that just was that thyroid stimulating hormone? Was that the the actual blood test you were talking about?
Yeah. So most often people will just get thyroid stimulating hormone, or TSH. That's made in your brain. T3 and T4 are made in your actual thyroid gland. And then the antibodies, which are anti-TPO and anti-TG, those are the ones that, when high, can indicate that you have Hashimoto's. So the reason why I don't typically like to just run a TSH is because, again, like I said, it's only made in your brain. It's not even made in your thyroid gland. So the analogy that I give to patients is, it's like wanting to know how your friend is doing, but asking their neighbor instead of asking your actual friend, right? Like, it's not going to the direct issue.
I love that.
So yeah, again, getting appropriate testing done. That way you can just rule out the full condition.
Yeah, totally. And I would follow up with that and ask, so somebody is, experiencing that stubborn weight that they literally just can't seem like they can lose it. Why is it important to get my insulin tested? And why is it important to get a full thyroid panel?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if that's the underlying cause of their weight loss resistance, you'll never know unless you get it tested, right? And treated. So it just goes back to, well, then all they're going to keep doing is trying to cut more calories and exercise more, and then give up and feel guilty that they're not working hard enough, as opposed to understanding that there are more complex issues at play. Like your thyroid, 1 in 10 women have a thyroid condition. Like, it's so prominent and not enough people are tested, because a lot of the times you could have subclinical hypothyroid where you don't have any other symptoms other than like weight gain, which again, people blame on not exercising enough or not eating well enough. Insulin resistance, again, we know it's not tested. So how would you know? Right? So there are other... Exactly. Even PCOS, which you guys have had a talk on already, right? That's another condition where hormones are a little bit off there, and insulin is high too. That is a condition predicated by high insulin levels. So of course women are going to gain weight there. We know that.
Yeah. And then in the long run, right? If fertility is something that you want to think about, having kids, that's a huge issue that you potentially run into, when you get a diagnosis of PCOS. With thyroid problems, you're looking like down the road at really high cholesterol levels and
absolutely.
Potential, heart, cardiovascular issues. Insulin resistance, obviously, that can lead to so many different things,
diabetes.
Not only weight gain, but diabetes and other cardiovascular and even like pulmonary issues, like with breathing and that kind of thing. So there's so many different things that we need to consider. It seems like a little bit overwhelming. And so somebody who's out there, just trying to figure out, should I go for a run right now?
I know.
Or go see my naturopath, or there's like that decision is out there too. And I feel for those folks because sometimes it's hard to know where to turn.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And there's so much overwhelming information out there that you don't even know what to do first. So yeah, it's real.
Exactly. And the first thing should probably just be to tune into Inspiring Insights and start to know more about PCOS and other things.
Exactly.
So, Dr. Emery, you've already spoke so much about like science and terminology in terms of like the medical profession. I would say for the folks listening right now, what are some maybe simple things that they could do at home that besides, maybe diet and exercise, because everybody knows that that's important. And I want to say diet loosely there, because I would rather call it like a eating paradigm or their absolutely. Nutrition in general. But what are some other ways that folks at home can do or utilize to support healthy weight?
Yeah. So the first thing that I always tell people because again, if you don't know at this point if you have insulin resistance or not, you might as well go with the assumption that you may have it. And so insulin works on a rhythm called the circadian rhythm, right? So during the day, during daylit hours, it's functioning at its best. It's allowing you, it's absorbing that glucose. If you tend to be the type of person that eats like at 10 p.m. or, you know, watches a movie and feels snacky, I would try to avoid that and eat between daylight hours, which I understand is difficult in Canada when daylight ends at like 4 p.m. So do your best. And even for people that, you know, work shifts, having that's going to be really challenging too. So at that point, it's like have a really big breakfast, which is technically, I guess, at 7 p.m. or right before you go into work. And then eating very minimally during your actual shift. And then, you know, before coming home, or I guess 7 a.m., potentially eating another meal. But trying to eat during the circadian rhythm of when insulin functions at its best is the most optimal. The other thing I would say is avoid snacking in general, because if you do have an insulin issue, whether it be because of thyroid or just like insulin resistance, if you snack constantly during the day, you're just compounding that insulin. It will not drop. It will just keep rising and rising. So the more you eat, the more insulin is being signaled to absorb that energy and glucose, and the more it just rises. So if you can just have 3 square meals a day, that works too. I know that Definitely. There is that thought process in the past where, you know, eat 5 small meals a day. No, please don't do that.
Yeah. And I mean, at this point, at this rate, I think, I mean, it depends on if you're working from home or not, but I found that a lot of my own clients were only eating 2 meals a day.
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe that's okay, depending on, you know, what actual nutrients you're getting, you're actually like having in your meals, right? So that's a huge one. But chewing food, oh my goodness.
I know.
So much.
So
people,
huge.
If you're, okay, I know you're all out there, people who are vacuums and you just you see the plate and then all of a sudden everything is gone off of your plate. I mean, I used to be that person. And I had all kinds of gut issues and I didn't know it. And I probably had some insulin resistance too, because my body just got fed so quickly and didn't have a clue what was going on and couldn't digest the food properly.
Yeah.
And then I got into mindfulness, you know, and actually just like taking a breath in between bites is huge. Even just something simple as putting your fork down, like letting it go out of your fingers, just putting it down on the plate and just chewing your food and waiting until you're done and then you swallow and then you pick up the next bite. It's so important, and it offers such a massive transformation that I can't even begin to explain. Such a simple thing, so big. And I first heard it from actually one of our professors at school, another naturopath, and he said just to take one breath before you start eating. And this was me. I'm guilty of this. Getting up right after you eat, still chewing, putting your stuff in the sink or in the dishwasher or whatever. He said, take a breath after you eat. Just sit down and do nothing after you eat. Let your utensil go and just sit and breathe. And I tried that, and what a world of difference it made.
It's so true. I mean, one, the gut issues is a huge factor. And then 2, we know that if you inhale your food, you will be more likely to overeat than if you just took your time, because that signal to tell your brain that you're full takes time. So if you just let your body naturally run its course, you will benefit from that. Also, the gut issues, the amount of women that come in with weight loss resistance, high insulin, that also have IBS is astounding. 20 million Canadians suffer from digestive concerns every year. So, yeah.
And there's how many million Wait, what?
Yeah, I don't know how many million Canadians, but I just know that
20 million Canadians suffer
every
from
year.
it?
Yeah.
And there's like only 33 million in Canada.
I know. It's a lot of people.
That's 1/3.
Yeah. It's a lot of people that have digestive issues, especially IBS. I also treat quite frequently because there is that correlation between weight loss resistance and IBS and any really gut issues. But yeah, again, if you have an issue with your gut, you likely will have an issue somewhere else. And sometimes that ends up being weight loss resistance. And so if you do have high insulin, for example, or a thyroid condition, if you're not treating your gut, you're not going to have the same benefit. Because your thyroid hormones are also activated and produced in your digestive system. So that's really important. The other aspect too is like you have gut hormones that actually regulate your insulin release. So 40 to 60%, I believe, are the hormones regulate your insulin that are the ones that are created in your gut. So again, if you have IBS or you have Crohn's or ulcerative colitis or something, or there's some sort of inflammation there, you need to get that also in check too, which again, majority of people have. So
yeah. And I mean, it's an issue, right? I think like it's just human nature as well to like put things off for as long as possible until it becomes a really big thing, right? And I mean, if I could change one thing about our own thinking, society's thinking in that paradigm, in this current model that we're in, it's like we are always in this reactive mode, right? Yes. And we don't want to react until it gets too late or, really on the cusp of like, okay, I really need to act now. Like something has to push me off the edge. And if I feel like there's some sense of, there's a proactivity that has to exist somehow in folks, in you folks that are watching right now. You have to be a little bit more proactive, and we can't tell you what is happening in your body unless you become a little bit more self-aware and understand what the signs and signals are in your body. And if you're having, diarrhea, constipation, stomach issues when you eat, if you eat too quickly, you may not notice these things on an everyday basis, or maybe it won't happen that frequently, or maybe you see that like everybody is also like constipated, so like it must be normal, but it's actually not the case. There are so many signs that your body is really showing. And if you're fatigued, if case in point, you have, that stubborn midsection of fat around you that you don't understand why it won't go anywhere regardless of what you do, that's the sign, that's a signal.
Yeah. That there's something else going on. Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't want to let it go.
Back, though, for 1 second. You mentioned the 3 square meals, and I want to talk about that a little bit more, maybe flesh it out a bit more, because a lot of my friends are what they call themselves snackers. I'm just a snacker or a grazer. So what does that look like? Does someone have to stop grazing in general, or should they eat more?
Yeah. So usually what I recommend after doing testing typically is, again, what I typically do with insulin testing is I'll do a 2-hour fasting insulin. So they test insulin and blood sugar fasted. Then you take a shot of glucose. It's really gross. And then they test again at 30 minutes, 1 hour, and 2 hours. If at the 2-hour mark, your insulin is higher than it was at the fasted mark, there's no way you should be snacking, because if you've eaten at 0 hours and then you eat again at 2 hours, you already have a spike without eating food or with just having the glucose, right? You spike when it should have gone lower, and then you're eating on top of that. So the grazing technique, probably not good in general for most people. Definitely would say to have larger meals. If, let's say, we test your blood sugar and you have really easy drops in blood sugar is typically low. That is probably the only time I would say having like some sort of good quality nutrient dense snack with you at all times, because I would also not like people to faint
Right.
if they get low blood sugar, or if you're a type 1 diabetic and you need to make sure that your blood sugar is stable. That's also something to consider as well. But if you're like type 2 diabetic, or you have insulin resistance, that is at the point where we can definitely have a good handle on it. No snacking. Have bigger meals. Usually the meals should be more like lower refined carbohydrates. I'm not against carbs in any way. I think they're completely necessary, but just making sure that the carbs that you do have are good quality. And then also certain things like having good quality fats and good quality proteins as well is also really key.
Mm-hmm. And can you shed light on what is a good quality fat? What is a good quality protein?
Yeah. So proteins can be from eggs to fish to chicken to red meat even. Depends on, again, everything in moderation. I wouldn't say have red meat every single day. We know that that can be a little bit more inflammatory as well. Turkey, all of those things. If you can go organic, that's fine. Obviously, I also consider the fact that not everybody can afford to go organic and grass-fed, but it's something to consider as well if you can. The other thing, good quality fats, so like nut butters, avocados, olive oil, even fatty fish oil, those sort of things are going to be, even grass-fed butter. Like, I'm not opposed to people having butter if they really want it. Obviously, just don't go overboard with it. But there's a lot of options. I think when people think of weight loss, they think restriction right away. But really, it's just about the type of food that you eat, and how much of it that you eat. Is it individualized to you? That's really important as well. So again, I want people to also understand what their triggers are. If you know that dairy is a trigger for you, then don't eat dairy. But if it's not, then have it in moderation. I just don't go overboard with things.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you for that. I wanted to go back because there is, quite a few people that do snack a lot or feel the need to snack.
Yes.
And maybe that's another, sign or signal from your body saying, oh, like there's something else going on. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And people that do have insulin resistance tend to feel hungry all the time. So it's like their body's working against them a little bit because they feel like they need to eat every 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And so trying to get past that, which is why intermittent fasting comes into play as well. I know that's a big fad, but that can help to reset things a little bit as well. So, you can start off with a 12-hour fast, and then usually 16 hours is kind of the more optimal range for a fast to really kick into gear. Again, if you have really easy drops in blood sugar, that's probably not for you. If you already don't eat a lot, don't engage in intermittent fasting. If you're, really young, between 12 to 18, probably not. Intermittent fasting is a good thing for you too. You need food to make your hormones. Just be cautious about how much you're eating. I always say with intermittent fasting as well, it's something that, if you've had issues with really restricting or yo-yo dieting, it might not be the right option for you as well, because mindset is a huge part of it.
Yeah, I hear you there.
Yep.
So, and I know we talked a little bit about, taking a full blood panel kind of thing, going to somebody who can do that for you. So we talked about fasting insulin. That one's important.
Yeah.
All of the thyroid panel.
Yep.
What else kinds of things should someone expect if they go and they want, a full kind of panel on weight loss resistance?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always like to test vitamin D just for good practice. We know that low vitamin D levels can be correlated with lots of different conditions. MS, even COVID. It's all correlated. Your immune system, your hormones, they're all dependent on vitamin D, bones. And we know that when vitamin D levels are in an optimal range, people tend to feel better, even mood, mental health, anxiety, which we know that can play a role in weight loss resistance as well. Inflammation in general. If you have an autoimmune condition, people tend to feel better when vitamin D is stabilized. And then again, I like to run inflammatory markers as well. So like ANA, depending on what the history of the patient is. So that's to kind of rule in or out autoimmune conditions. Because again, if inflammation is high, that's going to also impair your ability to lose weight. Same with something called HSCRP, which is a more specific inflammatory marker to the gut and the cardiovascular system. Again, if that's super high, you're probably not going to lose weight because you got a lot of inflammation going on. And then I also like to run cortisol depending on if people are super stressed out. We can see if you have really high cortisol or really low cortisol. That will tell us if you're really a really anxious person or like at the point where you're burnt out. So that can be supported as well. And then just other markers like B12 and iron are really important just to see where you're at, especially in women. Most often people that are experiencing weight loss resistance will also be experiencing fatigue. I also just want to make sure that there's no nutrient deficiencies that are also at play. Because again, you need all of those vitamins and nutrients and minerals to make sure that things are functioning optimally in your metabolic system. But yeah, that's usually some of the major things that I tend to test. Again, it is also completely dependent on the people coming in the door too, right? Like you deserve to have individualized blood work done based on what your other concerns may be or your history.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And two, the nutrient markers are really important, I think, because specifically for yourself who works with people who may have just given birth.
Yes.
And are in that kind of like rest mode, but also like, can't really get much rest because they have a newborn. So, it's probably really important. And if there's someone who has been menstruating for a while and if they have like a heavy period, iron could be an issue and all these things. So thank you for shedding a little bit more light on that. And I would ask maybe, why is it important to get this blood work done? And if for folks going through this journey, what does it look like? Are they going to get another test later on down the road, or how many months can they expect?
Yeah, so typically what I do is between first and second visit, I'll always run blood work because it will obviously direct our treatment. Again, blood work should tell us something new, give us more information, or be able to direct treatment. You shouldn't just get blood work for the hell of it. So once it tells us what's actually going on, then we engage in treatment. And that's, again, completely holistic. So we look at all of the factors that are contributing to whatever it is that is the issue. Usually I give people 3 months and then I retest. With especially insulin resistance, thyroid, if you've been experiencing this for a long time, really any condition per se, if you've been experiencing something for a long time, it takes time to create a new baseline. So usually testing at 3 months, things tend to get better, but they might still be a little bit high. And so we keep going, and then we retest at another 3 months and see how that goes. But again, it does take time. And most people are pretty motivated to make those big changes though, right? Especially when you have the support and you know what your triggers are. That's a really big thing for people. For example, if you realize that you're super anxious, and that's one of the major reasons why you're not losing weight, taking time to like maybe engage in therapy, doing getting acupuncture done, like all of those things, doing like the lifestyle changes, that doesn't happen overnight. So it takes time for things to kind of fall into place. And, with weight loss too, when you figure out what the actual issue is, like let's say it is insulin resistance, things start to get better. They really do. And within at least the first 3 months, even if your insulin isn't, optimal, if it's better, you probably have lost a little bit of weight.
Totally. Yeah. And I appreciate knowing that timeline too, as a patient, going through the system, because it's useful information and also gives you a small win. It could really be the difference. You could get a baseline, and then in 3 months, after doing minimal changes, after literally just putting your fork down in between bites for 3 months, that's a lot of meals, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot less stress on your body. Chewing your food, those little things that we talked about, getting that right sleep back on track, and then having those comparisons. So the baseline of blood work versus in 3 months or 6 months is huge. And I appreciate you saying that it doesn't come overnight, because, we are people who have lived for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years in a certain way. And as we know, change is really difficult for a lot of folks, and that's okay too. And so you just take little steps, and you need a small win, at the beginning, and that's totally fine. You need several probably, and that's also really great. So working with somebody who can keep you accountable with that is a huge importance for me when I go through something that's life-changing, and I need a coach, somebody that's there pointing out those little things, or else I won't see them, Yeah,
it's so true. It's so true. We all not only need the accountability, but like the support aspect of it too, because it's so easy to hit a plateau and then feel like, nothing's happening. There's no changes being made. And then you just go back to, what your patterns were in the past.
Yeah. Totally.
And and I completely understand. It's so disheartening to feel like you're failing, because that's what weight loss or weight gain tends to feel like in people. It's a failure. And it's really not, because we know that there are so many other factors, even if it's purely just not eating well and not exercising. It's hard on people. I mean, we have McDonald's and Starbucks and everything that is tempting to us all over the place. There's also socioeconomic status that influences what people can afford to buy, what they've grown up eating. Like, there are so many factors that affect weight that it's so challenging to even say things to people. Well, you just need to lose weight in a 5-minute conversation, right? Like it really is a culture of shame. And I'm trying to help break that, because it's not okay for people to live like that all the time, to feel bad about how they look. So that's kind of where I feel very passionate about helping people in this situation.
And the way you speak about it is very empowering.
Thanks.
From someone just looking in from the outside. And you guys have to follow Dr. Anne-Marie on Instagram. Her posts are amazing. I'm loving your stuff that you post. I'm like, oh my goodness, yes. Your handle? Let me just, it's Dr.Regina_ND, like naturopathic doctor.
Yes.
And I can actually write that in the comments too, just so everybody knows.
Awesome.
And while I'm gonna just maybe wrap things up a little bit.
Yes.
We're getting to that point when we talked about a lot, which is great.
Yeah.
I want to extend the audience some time for questions. I have a question myself, and I actually already put it in the questions, the comments box. But I'm going to hold my tongue for a second and see if anybody else has a question specifically about anything that we brought up tonight on the talk, or, something that your friend wants to know, or somebody that couldn't make it tonight or whenever. Also, for folks who are watching this replay, you can actually just write it in the comments. It will get emailed to me, and I'll answer that question for you. And if I can't answer it, Dr. Anne-Marie here will. And if we both can't, we will find out the answer. And I actually have one final question for you as well, Dr. Anne-Marie. So while folks are thinking, I wanted to ask you, what keeps you inspired?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Honestly, every day knowing that I can make a difference in someone's life keeps me inspired. Like I wake up, I drive to work, and I'm just so excited to be able to talk to people about their health and educate them. Like I always growing up, I debated, do I want to be a naturopathic doctor? Or do I want to be a teacher? And I'm like, why can't I be both? And that's why I chose naturopathic medicine, because I can do both. I can help people so much. You know, every day people tell me, wow, thank you for giving me the time to talk about my blood work. Nobody's ever done this before. And just hearing that makes me so happy, because I don't think that's fair that you're in this system where you don't even understand what's going on in your own body. And if I can even elucidate something for somebody, that makes me really, really happy. And so, yeah, that's kind of what inspires me every day.
That's incredible. I love that. And yeah, it's apparent in everything that you do, Dr. Emery. So I really appreciate you existing and you being here and being able to come on and chat with us. I don't see any particular questions. I mean, Rachel had one there that says, wondering particularly about when patients hit their plateau with weight loss. So maybe, Rachel, you can explain a bit more in terms of what that what that question actually is referring to, or we can just kind of chat about, you know, that plateau and how to go further with that. But I'll wait for you, Rachel, on that one. And I had a question when we were discussing food in particular, because I know this is a hot topic and like everybody got to eat, right? And particularly in the realm of, you know, that stubborn weight and that we often see companies marketing to women as like, you know, sign up here for Jenny Craig or like use this specific fitness protocol or whatever. And a lot of those programs use portion control as a way to kind of fix or at least kind of have this person eating this certain way for a certain amount of time. And I know that you mentioned that you don't like, you know, the word dieting or restrictions in that sense. So what are your thoughts on portion control?
Yeah, I mean, if you're overeating, obviously it can be helpful. But if, again, you're not, it could just be the types of foods that you're eating. Like there are certain foods that can cause insulin to spike higher than others. So there's that. Again, I also tell people what is deemed healthy may not be healthy for your body either. So that's when we think about food sensitivities and inflammation that way. Or if you have IBS, maybe going on a low FODMAP diet is something that's more tolerable to your body. So again, it should be more individualized as opposed to just like putting the blanket statement of eating less and portion control. I think that is a very simple solution to a very complex problem. So yes, it could be part of the problem. Yes, it could definitely be part of it, but it's not the whole piece of the puzzle, especially for people that have weight loss resistance and they feel like they've tried everything. They probably tried the portion control route as well.
Right. And yo-yo dieting and everything else. And, you know, I think most people come and turn to the natural or alternative or complementary wellness world when those things haven't worked, you know, for a while. You know, when exercise that their doctor recommended just isn't going well or whatever. And it really speaks to a much larger issue, maybe a societal issue of our ability to change our habits, you know, and the feeling and the sensation of permanence and what that is, and our reputations to uphold, and how easily we can change those and shift those, and who we have in our life that supports that change is really important too. And, you know, habit forming is so big. And I love that book, Atomic Habits. Have you read it?
Never read it, no.
Okay, I can't remember the author, but Atomic Habits, really good book. Anyway, thank you for that. And I hope that folks out there have understood that answer in terms of portion control. And I think it was very useful for folks, because I don't think really, you know, portion control isn't everything. And it's more so about the density of nutrients that you're intaking into your body.
Yeah. And if they're the right foods for you as well. So
yeah.
that's
And
a huge piece.
Recently, just in general, recently I got some sensitivities tested, and the practitioner was so helpful. She said, it doesn't matter whether you're eating a kale smoothie or 2 shots of vodka on a hot sunny day. If you feel stressed out, none of those things are going to work for you.
I know.
Or if you're restful, maybe it is nourishing in some ways. So there's like so many other complexities to consider.
Yes, so many, always.
Yeah.
With the plateau, I know, Rachel, I wanted to just address that. It definitely depends on when that plateau is happening. Like if you've already lost like 25 pounds, that's fantastic. What is your goal? Of course, if you're the type of person who's like, I just want to lose that last 5 pounds, you might not need to lose the last 5 pounds. That's kind of the other thing that I discuss with people, having good goals. But it also, like, changing things up. I think making changes in people's diet and patterns and schedules, changing up certain supplements that we use to help to maybe address the insulin resistance or the thyroid. Sometimes making those like little minor changes can help to reset the body a little bit, because again, your body does get used to a certain pattern. And when you change up that routine, then things can shift. So sometimes it's adding things, sometimes it's taking away things, sometimes it's just varying up the schedule. But yeah, that's usually my go-to when people tend to hit a plateau. And then from there, again, it's always about reevaluating, reassessing blood work, what's going on. Are there external factors like stress or like anxiety and other things that are causing, a shift in your mindset at that point, or just in general? Like there are so many things that can result in a plateau. Usually it's not like I hit a wall, like there's always something else.
Totally. Yeah. And it depends too. Can you speak a little bit about maybe if folks are interested in weight loss, can you speak about maybe a healthy like timeline in terms of weight loss?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, losing 1 to 2 pounds a week is healthy. You don't want to lose more than that because it'll really shock the system. That's the whole issue with yo-yo dieting too, right? Like you lose a ton of weight in a short amount of time, and then people tend to gain it all back plus some. And then it messes with their metabolism. So then they can't lose the same amount of weight again. That also disrupts insulin signaling as well, the yo-yo dieting piece. But in terms of, I mean, goals, it just depends on how much people want to lose, right? I find the more weight that people have, the easier it is to lose. But I mean, given timelines, right? Like in 3 months, we should lose, let's say 20 pounds. And then more than that, we should keep reassessing, right? Like it just depends on what the major goal is. But as long as we're reassessing and we're seeing that things are moving in a healthy direction, then yeah, that's what we're looking to accomplish, right?
Yeah, definitely. And asking them other things that might make them feel healthy or make them feel more energized rather than just having the weight as the goal.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't even really do weigh-ins, like people coming in, just checking their weight and leaving or anything. It's also more about how you feel in your body. Are you comfortable? Can you fit in your jeans? Like, do you not have a ton of gas and bloating? All of those things are going to make you feel better, because sometimes people are obsessively looking at the scale and then they get upset because they haven't lost any weight that day or that week. But if they didn't do that and they just judged based on how they're feeling, they might have felt great. Like they might not have had gas and bloating, or they fit a little bit better in their jeans. And so that feeling and sensation also gives people more confidence and makes them feel better, like they're really doing something. And they are. There's something to that.
For sure. Yeah, I love it. I love it how excited you are about this stuff. It's so good to see. Rachel, did that answer your question? I think that was, I thank you for clarifying, and also Dr. Emery for really like rooting down into that question. It was great. Otherwise, we will shortly sign off. I did just want to end by giving you folks Dr. Anne-Marie's contact information. So I have put her website in the comments there, but it's just Dr. Anne-Marie Regina-nd.com. As well, her Instagram, dr.regina_nd. And then you also have a way for folks to book a free 15-minute consultation call with you.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I put that link there. And then also, I guess it's through your website?
Yes, on my website as well. If you go onto my website, you can also download, it's basically a meal plan that's more specific towards insulin resistance. So if you ever wanted to check that out, you can do that as well. Download it there.
Amazing.
But yeah, it's research-based, evidence-based, everything that I recommend, always evidence-based. So yeah, you could definitely check that out. And yeah, the booking link is there for a free 15-minute in-person or over the phone or virtual consult as well.
Amazing. Dr. Anne-Marie Regina, thank you so much for being here. This has been episode 13 of Inspiring Insights. Check us out at, we actually have a new YouTube channel now. So just type into YouTube, Reawaken Co. So that's just CO and then Inspiring Insights. That's the channel name. You can check out all the episodes there. And we're going to keep on continuing throughout the holidays and into the new year. So thank you again, Dr. Regina. Any last words?
No, thank you so much. And I hope this was really helpful for people and they learned a lot.
I'm sure they did. And as always, if you have any questions, just reach out. Okay,
Thanks,
have a lovely evening.
Bye, everyone.